coming up on today's show, we're going to talk about the latest on Bill Belichick and whether or not he is getting cold feet before taking the Falcons job. We'll also touch on Jim Harbaugh as he's interviewing for a second time. What does that mean for Belichick? Mike Vrabel is also interviewing as well, so we'll dive in on that. And then we'll wrap up the show by running through the complete interview list as the Falcons list is up to 13 names, and we'll catch you guys up to speed on all of that. But watching the Detroit Lions win not just one, but two playoff games, I do think that provides some hope and honestly a little bit of a blueprint for franchises that historically might not be the best, that they're not out of it. That the NFL is not just for the Patriots and the 49ers. You've got all 32 teams capable of going the distance. So if you want to see the Falcons win some playoff games next year, hit that thumbs up button. Now, let's get on to the latest on Bill Belichick potentially coming to the Falcons, because for the last 2 weeks or so, it has felt like this is a 99% chance of happening. However, over the weekend, Jonathan Jones from CBS Sports reduced that percentage. Here's what Jones recently wrote. But a source familiar with Belichick told CBS Sports blank desperately wants Belichick and that it's ultimately Belichick's job if he wants it. That source said it's 50-50 right now that he takes the job. So is this why the Falcons are conducting more interviews throughout the week, right? Is this the reason why they're bringing Harbaugh back for a second interview? And the same goes for Ejiro Evero and some other candidates. We also have Peter King from NBC Sports saying Bill Belichick is no lock to be house hunting in Buckhead. So we've got Jonathan Jones saying it's 50-50. I've got Peter King saying that it's no lock that Bill Belichick will be moving down to ATL sometime soon. And then I've also got Albert Breer from Sports Illustrated maybe giving us a why that is the case. It's hard to see Belichick being comfortable with any sort of arrangement where he's reporting to McKay from Albert Breer at Sports Illustrated, RIP. Mostly because, well, those two haven't been on the same page over the years, with the former Patriots coach often open disdain for the NFL's competition committee that McKay has long chaired. I still believe Bill Belichick will be this team's next head coach, and the possibility for these other interviews simply could be for leverage reasoning, right? Bill Belichick has 0 other interviews with NFL teams. And so if it's true that he is dying to get to Don Shula's all-time win record, he doesn't have a whole lot of leverage to flirt with other teams to make the Falcons want him more, right? So if there's leverage to be had, it's with the Atlanta Falcons. And that leverage may very well be they don't want to give Bill Belichick all of the control that he had in New England. They might want to keep some of the same structure, where McKay is in charge of the football operations, and Terry Fontenot is still the GM. And that very well may be the reason why they are looking at other candidates so that Bill ultimately gives them a call back and he goes, you know what? No one else has any interest in me right now, and that might be a red flag in its own right. And I want to get to 16 more wins to be the all-time winningest coach in NFL history. So I will budge on some of my demands for staff and whatnot, and I'll become your next head coach. Because when I saw that Arthur Blank interviewed Bill Belichick on his private yacht off the coast of the U.S. Virgin Islands, I don't think they brought all their interviews down to Blank's private yacht. So it's clear that the Falcons have a lot of interest in Bill Belichick. And maybe Bill is thinking right now, Atlanta's not a perfect spot for me, and he could take the Sean Payton route of taking a year off, waiting for the perfect spot to open up, but he's 71 years old. If he takes a year off and he doesn't do anything this next year, because there's no way Bill Belichick is going to hop in front of the camera. He is not made for media. Then I'm not sold on Bill Belichick getting a whole lot of opportunities next coaching cycle. So this might be his only chance at breaking Don Shula's record. And we know the Falcons have interest. You don't take someone on your private yacht for shits and giggles. Now, I also found this tweet from Diana Rossini to be pretty interesting, and I'll tell you why. Rossini tweeted out, as expected, the Eagles fired defensive coordinator Sean Desai. We don't care about that. Over the last week, both Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni have been reaching out to available coordinators, including former Giants DC, Wink Martindale, and former Falcons DC, Ryan Nielsen. Now, I looked at that tweet and I responded to it because it's not former Falcons DC. Ryan Nielsen is very much still the defensive coordinator of the Atlanta Falcons. Arthur Smith was fired, but the rest of his staff was not. And whoever becomes the next head coach will have to decide who to retain and who to move on from. So I saw that tweet and I kind of wondered, was this Diana Rossini just, hey, mistakes happen, head coach was fired, maybe she thought the DC was fired too. I'm not going to bury her for that. We all make mistakes when posting online and whatnot, right? Or maybe this was Rossini maybe tipping her hand a little bit, saying, I've got word that Ryan Nielsen is done in Atlanta because the next head coach, Bill Belichick, wants to bring his own staff down. So it might not be former at the moment, but in a couple of days, maybe even a week, it will be former DC Ryan Nielsen. So this could be a little tiny breadcrumb on the path of the Falcons know who their next head coach is. And after meeting with Bill Belichick twice and getting the lowdown on what he wants to do with the staff, they gave Ryan Nielsen permission to interview for other DC jobs because he's not going to come back next year once they anoint Bill Belichick as the next head coach of your Atlanta Falcons. Now, Jonathan Jones in that article from CBS Sports also had this little nugget. One source with the Falcons told CBS Sports they'd prefer to go elsewhere if Belichick wound up being hired. And Belichick would, of course, bring in his own people on personnel and coaching. So that decision could be made for that source anyway. So we've got more breadcrumbs on inside Flowery Branch for those coaches remaining. They are preparing to lose their jobs because Bill Belichick is going to come in and get his own staff in there. So let me know, will Bill Belichick be the next head coach? I've got Peter King saying don't start house hunting just yet in Buckhead. I've got Jonathan Jones saying it's 50-50. I've got the Falcons conducting other interviews. But ultimately, I think that might be a whole bunch of smoke and mirrors. That could be interviews for the Falcons to get a head start on potential new OC and DCs. I think Bill Belichick will still be the next head coach of the Atlanta Falcons. Switching gears, let's talk about some other candidates, just in case that does not happen, though. Schefter tweeted out, Falcons are interviewing Texans OC Bobby Slowick today. They also will be meeting this week with Mike Vrabel and Jim Harbaugh in person and scheduling other in-person head coaching interviews as well. Their head coaching search is said to be wide open. Someone's leaking this to Schefter, right? Someone in Atlanta is telling Schefter it's wide open. And there's two reasons that might be the case. Reason number one, it is wide open, right? For whatever reason, after the second interview with Bill Belichick, it did not go well. They did not see eye to eye. And ultimately, the Falcons are back to square one. Or they are leaking this to Schefter to give themselves some more leverage for negotiations with how things will operate with Bill Belichick. But let's talk about Jim Harbaugh here, because he previously interviewed with the Chargers. He's going to have a second interview, and that might have already been scheduled by the time you are watching this video. The Falcons are going to bring Harbaugh in for a second time later this week, and we all know that Harbaugh had a ton of success in his first stint in the NFL with the San Francisco 49ers, going 44-19-1. Now, Jim Harbaugh is one of the best coaches in my eyes, not just in this candidate pool, but if I'm talking like building a dream coaching roster, right? Andy Reid's definitely number one right now. And even though Harbaugh is not in the NFL, I would take Harbaugh over a boatload of NFL head coaches. But in my opinion, Jim Harbaugh is a Charger. The Chargers have not done a very thorough coaching search so far. And I think that's because the first meeting with Harbaugh was, hey, how do we want to go about this? Like, do you want us to hire you today, tomorrow? Do you want to give yourself some time at Michigan? Just let us know when you're ready, and we will crown you as the next head coach. Harbaugh is a Charger. Now, Harbaugh in San Francisco, speaking of time on the West Coast, was tremendously successful, right? First 3 seasons in the NFL, NFC Championship game, Super Bowl, NFC Championship game. So talking about taking a roster that's 6, 7, 8 wins, somewhere in that no man's land, and taking you all the way to the championship game in your first season, Jim Harbaugh has done that before, and I think he is fully capable of doing that with the Falcons. So maybe Atlanta is Harbaugh's backup plan, because I think the Chargers would love to have Harbaugh. But what if the Chargers get blown away by Mike Vrabel, by someone else? And ultimately they decide, we're going a different direction. And at that point, maybe Harbaugh feels like he's in too deep. The NCAA is on his tail. All of his best players have left Michigan. They are going to the NFL draft. He has won the Natty, and he wants to go win a Super Bowl. And now is the perfect time to jump ship from college to the pros. And if the Chargers' job, for whatever reason, were to become unavailable, I think Harbaugh at this spot is putting himself in a good position to at least have a backup plan in the Falcons, because there haven't been a whole lot of rumors and buzz connecting Harbaugh to the Falcons. But a second interview is definitely more traction than he's had with other teams in previous head coaching cycles. Now let's go back to this Adam Schefter tweet here, because not only did he talk about Harbaugh, but he also talked about Mike Vrabel and Bobby Slowick. So I want to hit on those two coaches and get you guys the latest on Vrabel potentially coming down to Atlanta. What if Vrabel came to Atlanta and hired Arthur Smith as his OC? It would never happen, but I did just see Vance Joseph come back to Denver to be the DC after being their head coach just a few short years ago, but never the exact following season. I don't think that's ever happened. But let's talk about Vrabes for a moment, because he was so successful in my eyes with the Titans. I mean, talk about an organization that I wouldn't say has never done anything. I mean, they did go to a Super Bowl with Jeff Fisher, but an organization that under Vrabel went to the postseason 3 straight years for the first time in franchise history. However, the last 2 seasons did leave Titans fans wanting more, right? 13-22 over the last 2 years. He has only interviewed with the Chargers so far. I find that to be rather bizarre. It's almost like, it's not quite the same, but like Lamar last offseason. Like, you got a hot commodity potentially on the market. In Vrabel's case, definitely on the market. And I've got one suitor so far. So I think we're going to see more nibble start coming Mike Vrabel's way. The report I saw is that Vrabel will be interviewing with the Atlanta Falcons on Wednesday. So keep an eye on that. I think Vrabel is a tremendous coach. I think what he did with the Tennessee Titans is remarkable. And I think the Titans moving on from Vrabel is a colossal mistake and an overreaction to a hands-on owner. And similar to David Tepper, in a couple of years, and it might not even be a couple of years, they will rue the day that they decided to fire Mike Vrabel. I would love a Mike Vrabel hire. If I got a notification tomorrow, if you got a notification tomorrow that the Atlanta Falcons hired Mike Vrabel to be their next head coach, I think that would go down as one of the best days in Falcons history, because Vrabel is capable of taking a so-so competent roster, not loaded and littered with like QB talent. He made Ryan Tannehill look like a borderline elite quarterback, and taking them all the way to the 1 seed of their conference. So Vrabel would be a fantastic hire for the Falcons. Let's run through the latest head coaching interviews here. So I've got asterisks next to requested interviews, and I've got little carrots next to received second interviews. So we've got Belichick, Vrabel, and then we've got Brian Callahan also getting a second interview. That is a sneaky name to keep an eye on right there. They recently interviewed Joe Brady and Brian Johnson and Bobby Slowick. So some of the younger, up-and-coming, offensive-minded guys. On the defensive side of the football here, I've got a second interview for Ejiro Evero. So Evero has always been, I shouldn't say always, just the last 2 years, kind of going from out of nowhere to being one of the hottest head coach interview names the last 2 cycles. 2 interviews with the Falcons. I wonder if that Evero interview is a potential Ryan Nielsen replacement interview, where they go, listen, we know that there's a new head coach coming into Carolina. He might not retain you as the DC. We want to see if you'd be a good fit as our DC for whatever head coach we hire. My theory on what's all going down in Atlanta is this. Plan A is still Bill Belichick. Arthur Blank wants Bill Belichick. If both sides agree, it will be done soon. I think they are flirting with Jim Harbaugh, as they should be. It would be injustice to this fan base to only have one target on your head coaching search and not do your homework on all the other candidates. And Jim Harbaugh is a great coach to flirt with. I think Mike Vrabel falls in that why not bucket, right? Even if you love Belichick, even if you love Harbaugh, Mike Vrabel is one of the best coaches in football. Why he got fired is still beyond me. So why not interview him? You absolutely should talk to Mike Vrabel. He might blow you away, and he might get the job on the spot. The backup plan, I think, is Evero and Brian Callahan. What if Belichick decides, you know what, it's just not a good fit in Atlanta for me, I'm just going to take this year off. And what if Jim Harbaugh goes to the Chargers? And what if Mike Vrabel goes to any other team? All of a sudden, plan A, plan B, and plan C might be out the window. And Arthur Blank has to have a good backup plan. And so that's why he has second interviews with Evero and Brian Callahan. Now, let me wrap up the show by tossing this question your way. If no Belichick and no Harbaugh, who do you want as the Falcons head coach? Mike Vrabel would be my number one guy after those two. But if you think it's someone else, let me know in the comment section. If it can't be Mike Vrabel, let me toss this name your way. Full court press for Ben Johnson. What the Lions are doing right now is nothing short of remarkable for just getting over the hump as a franchise. And it takes a special leader to recognize, hey, everyone else is saying that we can't do it. But if we just tune out what history has told us before about the Detroit Lions and focus on what we can control in this locker room, there's no reason why we can't go to the NFC Championship game. So for Ben Johnson to maybe come down to Atlanta, and sure, the Falcons have been to the Super Bowl before, and the Lions have never done that before, but to go from one overall historically losing franchise to another, let's just be honest, historically losing franchise, he did the first one. I'm inclined to believe he could bring that type of success over down to Atlanta. Also, one more thing to add on Belichick. I didn't want to include this earlier because it's kind of a bummer, but Ian Rappaport put this out. Belichick, of course, has interest there. And do not be surprised if Josh McDaniels ends up landing with Belichick if he goes to Atlanta. I don't think anyone is super jazzed up about the idea of Josh McDaniels just being a part of your organization. It was an absolute failure in Denver. It was an even bigger failure in Las Vegas. But as the Patriots OC, I think they won a couple of Super Bowls. So if he is under Bill Belichick's overall surveillance, I think I can handle McDaniels as the OC. But I don't think anyone's super excited about that prospect. Now, if you made it to the end of the video, hit that thumbs up button. I love to see those of you that watch all the way to the end of the video. So please, if you have not liked the video yet, go ahead and do so. And make sure to subscribe. I hate to beg, but if we get more subscribers, which we have picked up a ton of subscribers over the last month or so, I can get more studio space and you guys can get more content.